The heat is on in episode 4 of The Walking Dead Dead City as Negan and Maggie race to carry out their plan to breach the Croat sanctuary and rescue Hershel. But as expected, things didn't go according to plan. This was by far my favorite episode of the series so far, so here is my spoiler-filled review of episode 4, Everybody Wins a Prize. So episode 4 begins with a really cool flashback to Negan's days of the leader of the Saviors back in the Sanctuary. He's kind of plotting, he's by himself, he's thinking about, his leadership duties and things like that. And in walks Simon, which was really cool to see Stephen Ogg back in that role. And of course he says, "We have a problem." And the flashback, it delivers on two things. Number one, it delivers on seeing the Croat and Negan in the same room, in the same scene for the first time, because that's something that kind of is on everybody's mind as soon as we learned the relationship between Negan and the Croat, and that this guy was a former savior who was crazy enough that Negan was even like, he's got to go. He doesn't belong here. He's a rabid dog, he called him, and he needed to be put down. And of course, Negan failed in doing that. So we get to see a little bit of their history with each other as well, but also we get to see the reason why Negan thought he was too much and he was too crazy. We get to see the fact that the Croat was torturing this poor girl from the kingdom that really didn't deserve it. And obviously Simon even says, kids are a boundary that we don't cross. We don't cross that line. And it's just, he's not hearing it. And you can see that somber look on Negan's face that he knows this guy's lost. He is way too far gone to ever recover from this. And Negan knows in that moment kind of what he has to do. He's got to put the rabid dog down. We then jump to a really cool scene between Negan and Maggie where the rest of the tribes people are kind of gearing up to go breach the Croat sanctuary, and things are kind of starting to gear up and get ready to go. And Negan says something really interesting. And I said in one of these previous videos, I forget what episode it was even in now, it may have been in the first one, but at one point, Negan's talking about what was. And of course, he's talking about himself in the third person, and Maggie says, yes, that they won and they overthrew him and whatever. And I said that he almost seemed proud of the fact that he was overturned and that piece of him he had to throw away and let go of. And he says something here, I wrote it down, and that it's a song that he doesn't want to sing anymore or hear anymore. When he's thinking about the Croat and he's thinking about those things that happened, you can tell that that is a chapter in that history that he does not want to have to revisit. And unfortunately, through these events and what they're doing, he knows that he is going to have to revisit that moment. He's going to have to revisit that song because he's the one who's going to bait the Croat to get him out so that everybody else can get in there, save Hershel, they can kill the Croat, and they can get the hell out of Dodge. I just thought that him saying that it was a song he didn't want to hear anymore was such a poetic way of saying that he doesn't want to remember that chapter. He doesn't want to live out that chapter of his life anymore. And it's another piece that deepens Negan's redemption arc and kind of further gives depth to his character, at least in the current form of him that we're seeing now. The scenery in this episode is absolutely beautiful, and it has been ever since the show started. The VFX artists are absolutely killing the game. When we see the shots in the park, with the benches kind of overgrown, nature's beginning to kind of take back the concrete jungle a little bit. The streets that are overrun with, vines and greenery and walkers, and it's so cool to see a different environment and how the apocalypse has affected a city versus kind of how it's just affecting, the country where we've seen our survivors in the past. Like I said, the heat is on. This one was suspenseful, it was action-packed. There's been a few people I've seen that have complained that there wasn't enough action, that there wasn't enough going on. This episode made up for it, because as we know, as soon as they got into Madison Square Garden, when Negan started to bait the Croat, all of his people, the Barazzi, are leaving. This was a trap. They knew they were coming, and he blows the edges of Madison Square Garden in, letting all of those walkers swarm in, and we get a really cool fight scene. Of course, some of the tribe's people are lost. We think that a couple of our main people are lost. And we end up, there's a really neat moment where Maggie sees the little girl, and she sees her, she's trapped herself in the octagon in the center, and Maggie has a moment where she sees Hershel, and she sees a way out. She sees a way that she can just forget everybody else and go get Hershel. And she kind of has to wrestle with that for a moment, and she only has a split second to decide, is she going to go save Negan's family, or is she going to go save her family? And of course she chooses to do what many would consider to be the right thing, and she goes back in the octagon. And it's a really cool moment because we get to see them not only killing walkers in really cool ways as well, and that whole choreographed fight scene that was really well done, but we also got to see her use some of what we saw during the All Out War storyline from Oceanside and the Commonwealth and Alexandria and Hilltop, when they're using things to push walkers back. They were using the padding on the side of the octagon and things like that. Really, really, really cool way of keeping the walkers away, and just kind of bringing little bits and pieces of the original series into the new one. Now, as I said before, one of the most intriguing things about this episode was that climactic moment between Negan and the Croat when they kind of come face to face. Of course, they're playing this cat and mouse game, and there's a moment where they kind of point their weapons at each other. Negan's kind of on the balcony below, and the Croat's looking down at him. And it's interesting because it gives you a sense of how crazy the Croat really is. I mean, Negan tried to take him out. He tried to kill him. And of course, he only blew off his ear. But there's a moment where Negan almost realizes that he doesn't even hold a grudge. Like, the Croat was just ready to welcome him back with open arms. And you can't help but think that Negan is realizing, like, he created this. The Saviors created this psychopath in a way, or at least they had a hand in creating him. And it really kind of drives home. I think the Croat was kind of holding out hope that Negan would join him and there'd be kind of this brotherly connection between them when they reunited. But when the Croat throws the Marshal over top of the banister and Negan saves him, I think that's the moment where something kind of clicks and the Croat's kind of like, oh, he was expecting a very different version of Negan than he ended up seeing. And I think that was kind of a jarring moment for him to see Negan in that way, saving the person who was sent to kill him. Because that's such a not Negan thing to do, at least the old version, the Savior's version of Negan. I also found it interesting that the Croat knew all about the all-out war stuff between Alexandria and the Hilltop and Oceanside and the Kingdom. That was pretty cool. I was like, oh, he knows about all that. He knows about the overthrowing of Negan and kind of everything that went down. He asked about where Lucille was. Again, it's just really cool creative ways of bringing the old in with the new. And I appreciate those little moments where we kind of at least tie in the old stuff, because it's still a part of the same continuation with the same characters. And even though this show has a little bit of a different vibe, and it's set so much in the future and things like that, it still helps as an audience member when you get to be like, you get those moments where what you know and the moments that we love from The Walking Dead get brought back into the series. And it's just, I love seeing those little moments. Listen, we've only got 2 episodes left of this show. I am super, super excited to see where it goes and kind of how we end this journey. I'm very interested to see what happens between Negan and the Croat. I'm very interested to see what happens between Negan and Maggie, what Hershel is going to think when he realizes that Negan is the one who helped Maggie get to this point. I mean, there are so many character questions that we have and that are kind of stirring right now. And I'm just really stoked to see where they go from here. So as always, I want to hear your thoughts, so be sure to leave me a comment down below. New episodes of Let's Talk Movies, Purely and Simply Evil, and Classics Revisited premiere every week at 8:30 p.m. Eastern. You can follow us on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and now Threads at LTM Podcast KY. As always, be good to each other. Leave me a comment down below. Leave this one a like, and we will talk to you soon. Peace.